The streets of Manchester's Moss Side have become a battleground. Drugs-related violence and personal vendettas have brought many untimely deaths. In 3 years, there have been 21 murders in and around Moss Side. Many were teenagers. In April 1990, Egbert Williams was stabbed to death. In April 1991, Carl Stapleton was hacked to death with a machete. In October the same year, Darren Samuels, on bail for attempted murder, was shot dead. In January this year, 14-year-old Benji Stanley was shot 3 times at close range and killed.
It's hard to go through. It was like a nightmare. I'd just been talking to Darren 10 minutes before, and the next minute I was holding him dying.
All of a sudden, there was a judder of fire. I think there was 2 or 3 shots fired. Well, I wasn't counting. I was terrified. I dug down. They fell down. 2 of them, one of them fell down. 2 of them ran into the kitchen. The one who fell down actually got up and went into the kitchen as well.
The bullet seemed to have skated straight across his face. And it didn't look that bad, but he was bleeding. I mean, he bled all over my arm and all over himself. He was obviously extremely worried about it.
There was just a few people. There was no crowd. And there was blood like a river.
The empty streets of Moss Side are testimony to the fear felt in the community. After dark, people stay indoors. The violence has been perpetrated by a small minority, vying for a share of the biggest business in the area. This secretly shot film shows the drug dealers operating openly inside a bookies in the Moss Side shopping precinct. This is the drug supermarket where everything's on sale: heroin, crack, cannabis. But the goods aren't on display. Hidden away in a secret panel in the wall, a dealer gets his supply of drugs. Hundreds of thousands of pounds change hands every year as addicts and suppliers buy their drugs from the dealers. 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, dealing goes on under the noses of security guards and shop staff.
It's a business. They have a commodity and they have to sell it. Drugs is such a commodity, and the value of it, there's a lot of money to be gained from it. So it does have a sort of very high street value, and obviously no respect to anybody and no respect to life. So you have young people who have no other opportunity except into crime or into drugs. You have a situation where gangs form on different parts of the estate in the area. It's not a question of painting a picture of mass. It's only a very small minority of people that's involved in this. But it's a situation of those young people don't see any other future.
A small number have affected the lives of those living in Moss Side. At this reggae concert, the organisers were expecting gang trouble. Everyone was screened for knives and guns. Here last summer, a young man called Lincoln Stewart was shot in the head. The Nears Centre is one of the few places left in Moss Side for youngsters to go to. It serves a population of 12,000, 40% of whom are black. The area has been devastated. Resources have been cut, shops have closed, businesses have moved out. For people looking for opportunities, there are none. Among young black males, the unemployment rate is 85%.
Oh,
There's a high crime rate in Manchester, but Moss Side's crime is more serious.
The people in the area, families, are worried about their children being out on the street, worried about what's going to happen in terms of how the drugs and violence on the street may affect their children. They're worried about going out themselves at night. Women, even travelling short distances, are travelling in taxis to avoid the problem and the fear of street violence. They're worried about security in their own homes.
A drugs raid on a house in Moss Side. Police tactics have changed. In the past, they largely ignored the soft drugs trade, but hard drugs like heroin brought in more money for the dealers and more trouble. Dealers armed themselves and gang warfare broke out. The lethal combination of drugs and guns in the hands of youngsters gave Moss Side notoriety and forced the police to act. One senior police officer described Moss Side as a nasty, violent place. Community worker John Samuels believes police policies have made it that way. For years, the police tried to contain the drugs problem within Moss Side.
The containment policy was the most, should I say, damaging policy that ever actually happened in this area.
Why do you think that was damaging?
Because, as I said, it influenced young children. It influenced 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 14-year-olds. Young children were, looking, observing youths doing their trading, and they took it up as an occupation further down the line.
Some of those that took it up were at school with D. Williams. He was fortunate and got a college place, but for those who ended up on the dole, selling drugs was a lucrative option.
At the beginning, it was a lot of money. I mean, in them days, to make money and stuff like that, for a kid to come out with, I don't know, a ton in his hand of £100, that was something, He used to buy the best trainers and stuff like that. Be able to go out, do things more than the average kid could do.
22-year-old Ian was one of those tempted by the money. Despite a talent for designing clothes, he's only had temporary jobs since he left school. He's on probation for 3 years after he got caught selling heroin. But it wasn't unemployment that led him astray.
I was seeing kids on the street and I got jealous, really, because of the money. And I just wanted to get into it, basically.
But you must have known that it was wrong.
Yeah. Well, to myself, I did say it was wrong, but it was quick money. As I say, it's just quick money.
How old were you at the time when you first started?
About 13, 14, about around 12.
Despite his age, Ian found it easy to join a gang and make contacts in the drug world.
Well, you have to know the people to get the right connections. You have to go out on the streets, and the person who's selling, you go to that person and he would tell you where to go after that.
So what did you first start dealing in?
Brown. That's how I know it of, just brown.
Was that heroin?
Yeah, that's heroin.
Ian was still at school when he started selling drugs.
After school, the best time to sell the drugs. At night time, no one can see you selling the drugs. You wear dark clothes, whatever. You don't wear bright clothes, how I'm wearing now, but that's how you do it.
So would you stand on a street corner? How did you get a piece of territory, if you like, where you could actually sell the drugs without being hassled or bothered by anybody else selling drugs?
You have to get to know the people before you could actually get a piece of the land to sell on.
At 14, Ian could make £500 a week. Whilst he profited, others took refuge from drug-related crime.
I grill up my windows and stuff like that, you know, because it's not so much that you're going to be sitting here one time and the next minute you're going to get a bullet in your head on accident, or you're going to get firebombed or whatever. Simple fact that you don't want thieves about, because one thing that nobody thought about at the time was that selling the stuff breeds a new type of thief, and that's what I'd call a smackhead, which is a scummy sort of person. Them people have no values, no meanings, no nothing.
The landlord of the Iron Duke pub has banned drug dealing, but the place is a social hub for everyone, and that includes dealers and addicts. Robert and Donna are heroin addicts. Donna has 4 children, including a young baby. How much money do you actually spend a day on drugs?
Between 50 and 70 pound a day, sometimes more.
How much roughly on average do you spend a week on drugs?
About between 550 and 700.
Is that
Between
700 between you?
us, yeah.
And how on earth do you raise up to £700 a week?
I steal it from shops,
Various
places. Not off other people, mostly shops.
How much money do you think you have spent over the years on feeding your habit?
About 150,000
You've actually worked it out to be £150,000.
in the last 8 years.
Shops have been forced out of business as the crime rate soars. Last year there were over 1,000 muggings, and burglaries are now commonplace. A small minority have brought misery to Moss Side. Jim Stevenson has witnessed the upsurge in crime on the estate. He's lived here since his house was built 18 years ago. Now retired, he devotes his time to a voluntary organisation which investigates miscarriages of justice. Recently, he became another crime statistic.
We were broken into, and we lost £900 in cash and valuables. We've had 4 other attempts, which came to nothing. Next door to us was firebombed. There's been 3 drug raids on that house. 2 which found there was no drugs in the house. And on the 3rd occasion, there was a small quantity of drugs. And the remarkable thing about the 3rd raid is that the people in that house had put up an iron gate, 9 bars at the windows, and that wasn't to keep burglars out, that was to keep the police out.
Although unemployed, Ian is now trying to set up his own business. He's got traders interested in the children's clothes he makes.
I've just come to show you some designs.
No problem. Let's have a look. Excellent.
When he was selling drugs, he made a fortune, which enabled him to move one step up and have others working for him.
I gave them sometimes a 60 for a quarter of an ounce, and I make basically 500 for myself or more.
Would you make that £500 just from one person that was selling the drugs for you, or from all of them together?
No, from one person.
And so from all of them, at the end of the week, you would get about £2 grand.
Yeah, you could say that, about £2 grand or more.
It's a fact of life here that the black youth of Moss Side see the drugs business as their business, because that's all they've got. It's all they'll ever get. The employment position round here is means that young men, young people are absolutely being degraded and losing dignity through not being able to earn a living.
Drug money equals power in Moss Side, and power equals territory. That territory has been divided between two main gangs. On one side of the estate is the Doddington gang, and on the other is the Gooch. During the years, petty arguments over women and cars escalated to arguments over drugs and territory. Feuds divided former friends and led to violence and even murder. The police have been powerless to stop the shootouts between them, yet they know who the leaders are and where they live. The Doddington gang have a reputation of being utterly ruthless.
Why Doddington is known as in that light is because their principle is, and there is principles, that they belong to Moss Side, they're from Moss Side, and no one else is going to take them off their turf. Their turf is their castle. This is their kingdom. And because of that, it will be defended with all forces.
And what do they use to defend this place?
Well, we have heard in the past there have been gun battles, there have been machete attacks, and there's been several of those type of wars that has gone on.
Against who?
Against any enemy, as they see it, that would want to come in and take their territory. They had running battles with some of the posse's gang members of the Gooch Close. I'm just going over to Gooch Close now after leaving Doddington.
Just a few streets separate the two warring factions.
This is Gooch Close. Gooch Close is where the gangs, young gangs, the young posses grew up together. They similarly had the idea of the Doddington, which meant they'd protect their own turf by any means necessary. They were more organized than any of the other gangs, so to speak, because if one was taken out, they would get together and go and trouble the person who troubled them.
Their activity has recently taken a battering. In 1991, in Operation China, police targeted the Gooch gang. They sat in derelict houses and surveyed the blatant selling of drugs on the streets. 20 people were convicted. Now another gang from Cheetham Hill, 4 miles away, is out to control Moss Side's drug trade. They're better equipped than the feuding gangs in Moss Side.
They were much more organized, much more military fashion, much more central.
What do you mean by military fashion?
Military fashion in the sense that they would have their generals, lieutenants, and field marshals literally operating in that military way.
Cheetham Hill's Tony Johnson was shot dead outside a local pub. Despite 2 murder trials, no one has been convicted. This is the final territory for many of the victims of Manchester's gang violence. A new crime wave has hit Moss Side, known as taxing. Individuals and businesses are robbed by the gangs. Recently, a number of pubs have been taxed, including the Iron Duke, whose landlord was held up twice. On that first occasion, did they actually get any money?
No.
But they did on the second occasion?
On the second one, because he caught me with the gun in his hand, so I couldn't do anything at that stage.
How much money did they take?
Well, I'd say about 200 and odd pounds.
Did you actually see the guns on both occasions?
No, I didn't see the gun on the first occasion. I saw the gun
on the Friday night, which was the second time when he came back. Because he came with the gun in his left hand.
Do you know who it might have been?
No, I have no idea because it was all covered up. It's only his eyes, 2 eyes, and his mouth I could see.
What about yourself? Does it make you feel as though you want to give up?
If there was a job to go to, I would give up. Yeah. But there's no job to go to now, so you have to try.
Why is that? Do you feel that the situation has just got too dangerous?
Yes, it's bad and it's getting worse every day.
Another victim of the violence in Moss Side is heroin addict Robert.
I got stabbed in the heart and I was dead on arrival at the hospital. And it was only for the heart surgeon being in the hospital after 2 heart operations that day that I'm here now.
What actually happened? Can you describe the incident?
I was walking through the square and someone asked me if I wanted to just go. I said no. He threatened to tax me, which is known as like taking the money off me, and stabbed me with a knife. I was in hospital for 13 days. I was in intensive care for 3 days on a life support machine, in a coma.
The violence, while shocking, is commonplace. The police believe on average there are 2 or 3 shooting incidents every day. Many go unreported. Some are gang-related, some aren't. Even within gangs there is little loyalty.
There's no trust in the drug world. There's no trust.
So you wouldn't trust any of the other people in the gang? They didn't necessarily trust you?
I talked to them, but I won't trust them. They could be with a friend or just talking to them while I'm on the street, selling to keep me company or whatever. And that's basically it, but I don't trust them.
That lack of trust betrays the jealousy and the rivalry in the drug world. Ian learnt the only way to survive on the streets was to make his presence felt.
You have to make them know they can't sell on that part of turf where you're selling. So yes, it's like sort them out.
Right. So the only way to make sure that they don't encroach on your turf is to beat them up?
Yeah, and, well, attack them really.
How would you attack them? Would you use a knife?
Yeah. As you say, a gun, but I never used one of them before. Never seen one.
So did you beat up people
Sometimes,
to make sure
yeah.
that they remembered never to go back on your turf?
Yeah, sometimes.
The Pepper Hill pub became the centre of drug and gang activity in the area. Numerous shootouts took place here between rival gangs. Last year, the police closed it down. In March 1990, Egbert Williams was beaten up outside the Pepper Hill. The following night, he went back. His sister, fearing trouble, arrived to see a man about to attack her brother.
And he just took this iron bar out of his inside of his jacket and hit me on the head. I then fell to the floor and he and my brother clashed. As he and my brother were fighting, I then got up and I was holding on to him and hitting him and dragging him to get him off my brother. But then there was someone hitting me and kicking me on my back. I looked across, my sister was on the floor and my other friend was on the floor, and this person was really laying into me in my back. So then I could feel myself slipping, and then as I was going to the floor, my brother fell, and his attacker fell on top of him, and I slipped and fell on top of his attacker. And at that point, I see my brother's head just roll back, and he just said, "Help me." Someone dragged me up off his attacker, and then they dragged him up, and my brother didn't get up, and there was just blood everywhere. Then I seen his friend drag him away, and they all ran off, jumped in the car, and screeched off away, and we were left there with my brother dead.
I'm just coping somehow by God's will. But you know, it's dragged me down so much, and I can't keep any help. You know. But I'm a believer in God. In God I trust.
Know what's going on. People will complain eventually to you, like they do to me, and say, my door was kicked off. I have nothing to do with drugs, but yet my door was kicked off. No one has apologized to me. No one's given me any compensation about it. What can I do about it? It doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. Now, I don't want it to happen at all. If they say they know who the people are, then target those people. Don't target innocent. Because there are innocent people sometimes that are involved innocently in some of this activity.
Mistakes are costly and cause resentment. Gary and Mark Ellison live in Doddington Close, frontline gang territory. They're not involved, but the police have targeted their house and raided it on numerous occasions. Mark is suing the police after he was subjected to a violent assault.
They had me on the floor, standing on my neck, kicking me in the chest, in the back, standing on my legs.
Quite a terrifying incident, really, that builds up from almost nothing. It starts in the routine and becomes a nightmare.
I thought I was going to die that night, basically. About 3 of them came in the van after me, when they threw me in the van. I had the handcuffs behind my back. I was on the floor in like a lean type position like that, and they just started standing on my chest, putting fingers in my mouth, over my eyes, over my nose, saying things like, don't let him breathe, don't let him breathe, and just... Not really.
It's the attitude towards him, almost of contempt.
John Samuels is a lay preacher. He tried to build bridges between the community and the police. That changed last September. While putting up posters in a bookies to recruit black youngsters into the police force, there was a police raid.
Another officer came in, started to wheel in, punches, blows to my stomach, legs, and a very, very heavy one got all of my neck and started to squeeze. At that point, I just was grasping for breath, and I called for help, and I think I blacked out.
The police have a philosophy which states that they are serving the community. However, when one looks at what happens in practice, that is not operating. And a whole series of incidents going back over many years, I think, indicates that very often the police behaviour in the area is much more like that of an occupying force.
The bitterness between the youths and the police has a long history. It exploded into violence in the riots of 1981. The embattled position of the police remains. Dispatches was refused cooperation in filming police activity in Moss Side. It was thought too sensitive.
Has everybody submitted their expenses, those of you that have been on container? If you don't put them in today, you probably won't get them. The last day is tomorrow. Can you all make sure you read this about the AJU?
What we were allowed to film was his daily parade briefing.
I just remind you that your annual leave forms are now out.
No senior officer would give an interview, but junior officers were willing to talk. They explained some of the difficulties they face in Moss Side.
Well, it's mainly the serious crimes that they don't come, they don't attend court. They'll give all the statements and the evidence, but actually attending court, they don't always attend.
Do you think it's just because they feel that they shouldn't do it, or do you think people have actually threatened them?
Mixture, basically, a bit of both. They've probably had threats, not to attend court and give evidence, so they've had second thoughts and not attended just in case these threats, carried out.
The main problems we have are with prostitution and drug offences and drug-related offences. A lot of it being spurned by no jobs in the area.
and just a general dislike for the police in the area.
You think there is a dislike?
I think so, personally, yeah. Usually by the younger element that tend to rebel a little bit.
What do you think the community should do to help you?
There's not an awful lot really, apart from trying to trust us more, I would expect, which is going to mean a lot of work on the police side as well as cooperation by people in the street.
Why do you think you don't have the confidence of the community?
Well, again, I think it's the different backgrounds of a lot of the people on the area. A lot of the people are black people from the West Indies who may have been brought up in a different regime, or where they may look after themselves, whereas we hope that the police will look after the problems they have.
What sort of problems do they have?
Well, again, I think the things with the drugs, the people, certain people are brought up with where drugs are readily available and are used, are commonplace. Whereas in this country, they are against the law to use them and to have in your possession.
Racist stereotypes will only make the police task harder. Brian Scott Ford is a former police firearms instructor. He's monitored the use of firearms in Moss Side. It seems the illegal weapon supply is inexhaustible.
On the last amnesty, there was tens of thousands of firearms nationwide handed in, but the Home Office still reckon there's twice as many out still on the streets.
Is there any way that the police can actually try and curtail the number of firearms that are circulating?
None whatsoever.
Recently, a youth was gunned down in this shop. One shot hit the telephone. The gunman escaped.
Well, it's the first time that this happened here inside the shop. We'd heard of shootings all around the area, but never inside here. So.
What are your feelings about the area?
I'm terrified sometimes.
Uzi submachine guns like this, capable of firing 150 bullets per minute, have been used in Moss Side. They're available for £400. Hand grenades can be bought for £50 and have been, by the Gooch gang. They're just waiting for the right opportunity to use them. Six weeks ago at 3 a.m, at least 30 rounds, including armour-piercing bullets, were fired outside this house. Two Moss Side youths smashed their way in through the back door.
One of the guys had a wound across the front of his nose, and we told him to sit down and wait for an ambulance to come, and the other guy he wouldn't sit still, and he ran upstairs. He was looking out of all the windows, obviously worried that he was being followed.
Now I think it's a power thing now. I think it's nowadays all they want to do is outdo each other, and they can't stand to see the next person that's selling making more than them, or the next group making more than them. So they'll go out of their way to destroy what they've got, hence the guns, and hence shooting people, and then it becomes a part of their honour to go whip somebody's ass, you know what I mean, stuff like that. It's stupid, but it's life. It's life down this end.
It's also death. The murder of 14-year-old Benji Stanley in January horrified the community. Police and some residents believe they know the killer's identity, but witnesses are too terrified to give evidence, fearing they could be next on the hit list. The police have a witness protection scheme, but it's proved a failure.
I'm a witness in a murder case and a witness in an attempt murder case. And my address should never have been divulged on the radio or in the evening news, and it was. And I feel badly let down. That it was. So much so that I refused to go to court on the attempt. Police protection, as far as I see it, is picking you up the morning for court, taking you to court, sticking you in a room at the back of the court or under the court, and then taking you home at night, and that's the end of it.
But while people remain silent, Moss Side's crime won't go away. This drug dealer operates from a pub with others. The drug industry benefits while people don't confront the problem.
They don't inform us. We don't got strict instructions not to let anybody film.
This Bookies is in the shopping precinct. Dealing continues despite the patrols by the precinct security guards. Day after day, the public chooses to ignore the drug dealing. No one would dare challenge the dealer going to his secret supply.
But weren't you frightened that standing around on street corners selling it, one of your neighbours would see you and pass the information back to your parents?
No.
But your parents must have seen you with money. I mean, what did you do with the money that you actually earned?
I'll put it down and save it up for myself. Which, yeah, you get clothes or whatever off it.
But they must have seen the new supply of clothes that you were getting for yourself.
I won't worry about that. They see the amount of clothes I'm buying and trainers or whatever. You just don't worry about it.
And do people know why you're selling these goods?
Quite a good idea, yeah. But they won't admit it, but they do know.
And they're quite willing to actually buy the goods from you?
Yeah, well, it's a bargain, isn't it? It's like you're getting a £200 leather jacket for like £50. You're not going to see no way.
There are drug operations like this every week in Moss Side, as the police try vainly to clear out the dealers. But as the shootings and dealing continues, it's a terrible warning for other areas of Britain. Too little being done too late.
It's here today, it can be somewhere else tomorrow. It may be some nice leafy green area of the city of Manchester, let's say for Manchester for instance, where then I think people may do something about it.